Well, welcome everyone to our second annual Karate Without L's B-side. Or I guess we can just call this B-side. I don't know. I don't know if I can use Monica's thing on Monica's intro for the podcast on this one. Maybe we can just have that open debate later as we go through the podcast. But I'm John.
I'm Jeremy.
And we're not going to probably get too much into martial arts right now. Because next time we have to do something that isn't something you recommended to me. You were like, this movie. And I wasn't like, what? What movie? Because the last time we did this, we were talking about Remo Williams. And it was like, what movie? And these gems that Jeremy has gleaned through his life experience that I only benefit from.
Either that or you get to understand the nuttiness of me, one of the two. So kind of.
Well, one was you're just literally like, I went out and bought a DVD and it was or a Blu-ray and it was like, you buy movies? You don't just find them on the internet through some possibly illicit means?
When you can buy them as cheap as what it costs to stream them, I mean, might as well. What the heck, that way. And I've got a little portable DVD player that's only, yay big. I mean, what's funny is I still use that every once in a while, so it's all good.
Today, my friends, we're going to talk about yet again a movie from 1985. It's the same year as Remo Williams.
Great year.
I guess it was a good year for. I guess it's like 1995, because 1995 was like the year Heat came out and like some other good movies. So I guess every 10 years, once we get to the 5 mark. So once we get to 2025, watch out, because there's going to be a decent bit of good content coming out. Wow. Actually, we're very, very close to the anniversary of this film. Or should we call Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon?
Oh, man. What a great movie.
Now, Jeremy had kind of goaded me with this movie for a long time. And he's like, The Last Dragon. Have you seen The Last Dragon? I'm like, what's The Last Dragon? It's The Last Dragon. Then I forget about it. He's like, what movie? The Last Dragon. It's the one we got to do for the B-side. And I kept on forgetting about it. But, yes, we were talking about this fun 1985 movie. As date of this recording, was March 14th. This actually came out March 22nd.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we're at, let's see, 85, it's 2021. So we're close to, I guess, the
36 years.
36, almost 40 years this movie being out. I don't know how to kind of get us into it. I have plenty to say about it.
It's a movie. It's a little quirky, but I don't know. I've loved it over the years. Every time I watch it, I laugh. It's just fun. I think the best way to describe, if somebody hadn't seen it, it's kind of like the 70s seriousness of the Bruce Lee and the black belt theater of martial arts meets the 80s video culture and just slams it together. And there you go. There's your movie.
Yeah. That is pretty much an accurate appraisal of this film. And in no way, shape, or form is it done with any sort of irony or any sort of like fourth wall winking or none of the stuff you'd see if this was made today, right? Like if you think if anyone had attempted this today, they would have never taken it as seriously,
right,
as I feel like they took it in this film. I guess we can kind of go through the plot points. It starts off with our main character, Leroy Green, or Bruce Leroy.
Yeah, Bruce Leroy.
Also known. It's set in New York City, 1985. Great little backdrop there. And unlike other ventures into the martial arts movies, this just starts out with Timok just wailing on it wailing on a bag, wailing on a wooden dummy, and having his sensei or master, which keeps the concept that just kept on getting brought up there, just shooting bows and shooting arrows at him, and him just catching him left, right, and center.
Or breaking them in the air.
And Time Lock looks like he could do it. Like, unlike Ralph Macchio, unlike whoever the hell was the star of Remo Williams, like, it looks like he's a great physical specimen in this. He's an actual martial artist who actually does a pretty good job of as being an actor. And I feel this is another instance of, we talked about this when we talked about Karate Kid 2, was they just kind of, I feel in this, instead of just finding a bunch of different like Asian things and just kind of parading them in a movie, they just like opened the Century catalog or whatever stood for Century in 1985 and just bought everything they thought would be relevant.
Yeah, they might have.
And just threw it in the movie.
Yes, probably right.
Because he's doing Kyudo in the beginning, and that's accurate. I mean, he's wearing the right uniform and stuff for that, and yet they have like the Wing Chun dummy in it, and they've got all this other different stuff. And I don't know what happens after the first scene, Jeremy. After that kind of a kick butt throughout the entire dojo. What happens after that?
Well, I mean, then he goes back into his life and stuff, and then it gets to the point where you get introduced into his so-called nemesis, or the villain of the movie, which is the guy goes by the name of Sho Nuff, Shogun of Harlem. I mean, whenever he introduces himself, I just laugh every single time.
But he's got the best villain introduction. Like, it's just amazing that like this guy, this just goofy looking guy, like they give him like a football shoulder pads and dress it up as to be like Sam. He's got just these sunglasses that have like the flag of Japan on it for whatever reason, and he's this entourage of 1980s street toughs.
Well, he looks. The other thing is he looks like Rick James with a top knot.
There you go. Oh my God. And he's just walking into this. Where's the first scene where we see him doing martial arts? No. Fighting on the street? No.
No, I thought it was in the theater while they're playing
Bingo.
While they're playing Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, and everybody. I mean, and what's funny is the only thing that would have been better is if they would have had the backdrop of music of kung fu fighting, because everybody breaks out into wanting to be Bruce Lee in the middle of this movie, and it's
and what's interesting is that this probably wasn't too far away from how those theaters were at that time, because there's like legends of just like New York theaters, these New York theater houses, like just being these like grimy places where people would come and just hang out and there'd be a movie on.
Yeah.
That might like just be kind of more apocryphal than I'm actually making it out to be. But I feel like there's like a strong sense of truth to this. Like there's like, this is like, it's not insincere. It's not like clearly like, yeah, it's kind of jokey, but I mean like also it's like, yeah, they're just beating the crap out of each other. It's New York in the 80s. I like this to contrast it to Remo Williams. Every time Remo Williams zigs in terms of like, talking about race or whatever, this zags, right? Because unlike Remo Williams, where they're very much like, what are you, like this kind of a guy or what? No, they're just like straight up like everything is implicit about it, but it's difference between like a bunch of white guys trying to put this on, and clearly this is a blaxploitation film.
Yeah.
Made very intently. And it's good. It's not bad. It's not so bad it's good. I didn't have like the anaphylactic shock I had when I watched Remo Williams. This is actually good. Anyway, so the Shogun shows up. Sho Nuff shows up with his like gang of like 8 or 9 guys, and for whatever reason, he knows that Leroy Green is his rival.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not really made clear, but
yeah, it's just it's kind of like the guy who wants to be the baddest one on the block. It's like, I mean, how many times have you seen that? Every once in a while, you just have somebody in martial arts. It's like, I just got to prove myself that I'm the biggest, the baddest, and I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's whatever arena it is. You just have that. You just have somebody like that just out there. So it's just.
But he's really kind of laying it on thick. I like how
just a little.
I like how he's trying to dress up. Like Leroy, our main character, is trying to dress up and be. I feel this is something very close to reality, even though it's played up a little. Is that the kind of culture mixture or clash that this film likes to show? Is that you have an African American guy training with a Japanese guy, dressing up like probably what he thinks a Chinese peasant dresses like, or a Chinese kung fu guy dresses like. Just in the hat and all, walking around New York City. It's ridiculous, but it's sincere, and I can't get over that. You know what I mean?
Well, I think also, you got your main character, and I think he's trained to the point where, he is taking the lessons so sincere to be so actually humble. He doesn't even look at his own skill. And I think you see that dichotomy between the two characters. You got the over, I wouldn't say flamboyant, but I mean just just ego. I mean, the ego is literally just pouring out of this guy. And then you got the other guy who's just just very, very humble, very, very, whatever, just move on. Don't. And I think in one way, I think that does kind of represent kind of the two sides of the spectrum of paths that a lot of people take, and everything in between.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, through your martial arts journey. Has there been times when I've had ego problems? Yes. Haven't we all? Isn't there times when we've been extremely humble? Yes. Haven't we all? So it's just kind of represents.
Entourage of, have we had our heralding entourage of street toughs?
Yeah.
You betcha.
I will say this. I guess I've never been that fortunate to have that. So it's I've never had.
There's still time, buddy. There's still time. I
don't know. I think probably the closest entourage I've ever had was probably about 3 or 4 of us. We'd go out and meet after training every once in a while. That was about it. So
I had a little bit of that. So kind of progressing in the plot, because this isn't just a singular man. He's actually I'd say probably early 20s. Maybe college educated, maybe not. But he lives in with his family. He just got to his family. They're just a regular African American family in Harlem. I like his little brother the most.
I would say, I'd say his little brother is a very well-informed young man that's kind of about as blunt as Arnold on Different Strokes. You know, it's kind of, I mean, the only thing, I mean, you're waiting for him to say, "What are you talking about?" I mean, I mean, it's just, I mean, he calls you out on every single thing that comes up. You know,
Well,
you can't get past him.
well, what's funny is this kid is you have his like straight as a arrow older brother. You have his two parents. I love it how the dads like they try to make the dad's like pizza restaurant thing into a thing, and it actually really doesn't. The only probably thing that intentionally doesn't work, like as a, like a catchphphrase, it doesn't
Well,
actually really seem to work.
well, I
Um,
mean, it's just kind of showing just a family just trying to make it through, run their own business. I mean, that's just kind of how I always looked at it. So,
well, and I like it, and this got us into a little conversation prior to the recording of this, because I thought his little brother was like a 12-year-old wearing leather pants in 1985. And Jeremy was kind enough to point out to me, in my ignorance, and no, they are not leather pants, even though quite clearly one can mistake them for that. They are parachute pants. Now, not in the parachute pants that we were thinking of, like, say, MC Hammer, but parachute pants that were simply popular during this time period. Which,
right. You know what? If you did not live during this time period and you were not growing up, I'd say middle school, high school, you may have missed this whole genre of gone, just
trend of
absolute
fashion.
horrible clothing. I mean, it's just, I mean,
I'm happy to not to rightfully say I probably saw the wreckage of it in my household, but and maybe was like maybe had like one or two. And I was just like, what is this? This is why I've always either gone hoodie, button down shirt, or suit.
no, I mean, I think it was almost the precursor to cargo pants, is what it really kind of was, because
Oh
they had
my
pockets
god,
every.
you're right.
They have pockets everywhere. I mean,
Oh my
literally. I mean,
god.
like in the calf, on the side of the thigh, and you got like 3 or 4 pockets in your butt, and that's like, gee,
My
Christmas.
god, you're right.
I mean, it was almost like a company got like, they ordered like 1,000 zippers and they got 100,000 zippers because somebody added a couple of zeros. Like, what are we gonna do with it? We're just gonna put them on these clothes. And we're just gonna keep putting them on. We'll figure it out.
It's a
You
fashion
know.
that came out of necessity. Fair enough. Okay, so
So
we got to, so there's his little brother who clearly knows more about the hippity dippity, as it were, than his older brother. And so one of the focal points, because this movie kind of takes, the people said this is like a genre whiplash. I don't think so, because it doesn't feel in any way, shape, or form like a whiplash. Because then it goes straight, because it's clearly drawing from the time, goes straight into both the love interest, the main point of the plot, more or less, and the, I guess, tertiary yet driving villain. So like the main part of the plot of the movie is, well, I guess we have to back up, because why is Bruce Leroy Green on his journey?
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he he's trying to figure out, further his training, and if you think about it, I think all of us kind of get into that mode, like, hey, we got to further our training. And then he gets to the point where he's hit a certain level, or he's hit a certain knowledge base from the person who's teaching. And so he tells him, the only place you got to look, and basically got to look at yourself. And he's trying to show him this, and he goes, okay, if you need something, then he gives him some goofy belt buckle that's like all gold and stuff. And he goes, you need to go find the map. No, I still think this is hilarious, but I mean, it probably not real nice, but he says, you need to go find the master, some dumb guy, and so he
Dum dum boy.
some dumb guy. And so he's going to try to find some dumb guy. And so he finds this place that
Makes fortune
is,
cookies.
yeah, it's fortune cookies by the master Sundam Goy, and it's run by just basically three idiots. I guess that's the best way to put it. I mean,
And it plays.
well, I don't know if they're really idiots. I mean, they're just trying to make money doing a business. I mean, really. So it's their hook.
What's hilarious is these guys, because it's kind of a flip of the stereotypes to a degree, because these three guys that are clearly Chinese, or they're standing for Chinese, or
Yeah,
possibly Asian descent, in New York, on the street rapping and hip hop dancing, and which is exactly the period for it. And then the African American guy comes up and he's like straight as an arrow, speaking in trying to overly articulate like Bruce Lee, and they just laugh him off. And then I guess we can't go by without commenting on this. Bruce Lee himself is like a presence in this film. Like it's and kind of a stand-in for like the influence of kung fu to like this is what the end of the kung fu media that people would consume at that time would bring.
yeah,
What people are just going to emulate because they don't really have any sort of guidance in their own. So he goes up to these three guys and they shoo him off. Apparently, also that Bruce Leroy Green has his own school.
yeah,
And where he clearly teaches karate because he's talking about Goju karate. It's like a little line and it just goes by. He has a thing that has misspelled karate on it. Yet he's dressed up like Bruce Lee,
yeah,
and all of his students dress up in Wing Chun outfits. And he
yeah,
has a couple costume changes where he goes from the Bruce Lee uniform, a ninja, and a kickboxer, like several different belts and stuff like that. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, and I mean, the attitudes of his students are kind of funny as well, and they kind of assimilate to the stuff that Bruce Lee had mentioned in Enter the Dragon, and you kind of see that kind of play out throughout the whole movie a little bit, where where the students like I can fight without knowing how to fight, and I mean you kind of these things, kind of like what Bruce Lee did, and basically he suckered the guy into the rowboat. Hey, let's go over the island and we'll go ahead and fight. And he goes, you first. And he gets him in the rowboat and just kind of pulls him on the tow cable. And it's like, yeah, I guess I won, huh? I mean, kind of in a roundabout sort of way. So
yeah, but he's also like, what is it? And then we have the character of Laura, who is a VJ, a
yeah,
video jockey, who has a like this is who like what person has like this. I don't know. You were there for it more than I was. How much of that like was really the? I know their
it
dance clubs were big in the. I know video dance clubs were big in the '80s, but like literally having a TV show and a club and
well,
showing videos.
I mean it kind of it was kind of an extreme. It was kind of a takeoff between you know classic American Bandstand. You had Soul Train, and you had a couple of these others, and some of them were kind of like, hey, we're going to show the video of this, and we'll have dances, and dancing and things like that. And, I mean, you did have a little bit of that, but was it completely mainstream? No, not. I mean, it wasn't. not real. I mean, it was like if MTV kind of did it. I mean, they
Right.
do some things and stuff like that, but not even to that level. But I do believe like there were some local area
Which is what
shows.
I think was very telling of that time. Whereas like nowadays, like nowadays that really wouldn't happen, or it would happen in a much different way. But
Right.
yeah, like the local like a local cable station would show that. It's interesting. I mean, but it jives well with the time. Exactly what they were trying to
Well, I
go
mean,
with.
it was kind of like how, I mean, with MTV and some of the other things that were going on. I mean, people were trying to come up with the next big thing, to kind of tie on to American Bandstand. I mean, American Bandstand was starting to go on the downhill.
Mm.
It was. I know it wasn't too long after that, if I remember right.
Well, I mean that American Bandstand been on for a while, but I mean, I
Right.
think the whole concept. Ooh, American Bandstand ended in '89.
Yeah. I mean, it was starting to go on the downhill around that time, and I mean, people were starting to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, yeah. I
Did
mean, it was
this quote unquote appeal to the younger generation, as it were? Um,
right.
but I mean, it's interesting to see this as like just a weird social artifact of the time that in any all the other stuff that's like been a big 80s callback that everyone loves doing these days is like the one thing I've never seen anybody touch, like in terms of like these 80s callbacks and like Cobra Kai and like all this other stuff, right? But like, or like Stranger Things, even like that, never touched that, never once. But like this is an interesting part of that. But then that's interesting that like, but then you see how people who were super into the martial arts, because I feel this even echoed into my time, was you kind of have to feel you have to remove yourself from that youth culture if you're going to be a part of that. So to it, even though it's comedy and all that stuff, I can see how Leroy would remove himself from that in his like grand quest.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we cannot ignore the fact that Vanity, also known as Catherine Matthews, was the love interest right off of her stint with Prince. Uh,
Yep.
so she's good in this. She's really good in this.
Oh yeah. She was
Feathered hair and
fantastic.
all.
Oh yeah. Hey man, don't. Hey, mullets and feathered hair, baby. I mean, I tell you what,
It's all
those
over
are the
that movie.
best. That was the best hairstyle ever. I tell you what, that and as long as you're using Aquanet Pink, I mean, it's like it's all good.
Well, and so she encounters him by just kind of giving a stare and a glance and have a meaningful moment, and then she gets hijacked, and then he comes to the rescue, loses his medallion in the process. That's how they kind of remain combined. And then the other villain, I want to say Aykroyd. I'm gonna get that wrong.
What, Eddie Arcadian,
Arcadian, yes. Um,
which which the name should kind of explain everything. Which basically is running arcades and things like that. Which video games arcades were massive in the 80s. I mean, you had like Aladdin's Castle and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's where you went and hung out.
and
And he's trying to build his girlfriend or whatever as a video pop star, and they
it just doesn't work.
yeah, it don't work. I mean, it, it's kind of funny because people were trying to do all this kind of stuff back then, and I do think it was interesting. There was a shot in there where
Oh my god!
showing up where Sho Nuff was at the pizza place, and they had that video thing that was it was like a jukebox, but it was playing music videos.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when I went back to watch this movie again, I mean, not too long ago, it was like I actually remember seeing not exactly like that, but I do remember seeing a couple machines like that back in the 80s. I mean, they had like the videos and they played, whatever was on MTV, and it was kind of a throwback. So, but
Proto YouTube.
they never really took off, obviously. But
It wasn't until we were. I mean, I feel like there's like there's a bunch of stuff like that that had just like stopped and started until we got to the internet. Like,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, pretty much it's all like proto versions of what essentially we have now.
YouTube.
Yeah. Interesting little bit of trivia. Vanity left Purple Rain, and then she signed a contract with Barry Gordy. So instead of Apollonia, if you think of it, because it didn't really strike my mind, because this is essentially, instead of like Prince being like a huffy little like prick driving away on his motorcycle half the movie, it's Timok kicking ass for the majority of it. This is essentially Purple Rain minus like all, like, not to diminish Prince, but Prince was kind of a jerk, and Timok seemed to like really really embodied a lot of what martial artists could do, and a lot of these like other guys couldn't.
Yeah.
So that's why I think this deserves a lot more praise than it's gotten.
Yeah, and then any Arcadian tries to take Vanity and all that kind of stuff, and then you got a new villain in the middle of all this, so it's kind of.
And so we go through the movie. They kind of develop a relationship, Leroy and Laura. It's a very oddly strained relationship. He clearly is trying to ask her how. Clearly, he's trying to imply to her that he wants her to show him how
Some
to
moves.
do some moves.
Some moves.
I guess we want to try to keep this PG-13.
Well, and part of that.
Part of that, the movie does in a lot of ways try to do that, despite the fact that it drops plenty of stuff that would break that.
I think about that. Back in the 80s, I think there was, when you were asking somebody out, there was that level of innocence, that he was displaying trying to ask this gal out. I mean, granted, it was the decade of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I get that, but it's not like today. It's like you go out on the internet and hey, this looks good. Okay, hey, let's go out and all that. No. I mean, there was like actual
courting or flirting or trying to figure the other person out.
And you know what? I think I know it goes on a little bit today and even the 90s and 2000, but I think the 80s was the last decade truly that you went through that kind of that level of innocence, I guess.
I mean, admittedly, he's talking to a girl who's like very famous, wealthy, has her own nightclub / TV show.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting that we don't get. I mean, there's the point where Sho Nuff shows up and basically destroys Leroy's dad's business. To which I say, ooh, is this a precursor to Do the Right Thing? But we don't see anybody like struggling. You know what I mean? Like, we don't see this like kind of like destitution or anything like that you would get in other movies. So I think that's kind of maybe the optimism of the time. But it's it's good.
It was, the 80s were the Reagan era, and I mean everything was definitely optimistic. After during a lot of things were optimistic during the 80s. Not to say that there weren't things that were tough or different things like that, but I really felt like that was an era of time where I really felt like the majority of the United States was united, unlike today.
Wow.
We're not going to get into that, but I mean,
let's not.
We're not getting into that. No.
Well, and
But
Yeah.
so I mean that optimism. I mean that everybody felt for the most part pretty good. I mean there was different times and things that not everybody was great, but I mean overall as a just a society, I think everybody really kind of
And that's, your experience may vary, as it were, but the plot kind of trudges on from that point where he realizes none of his kung fu is going to work, or it's like his little brother like really just says is like, what's your kung fu worth if you're never going to use it, and he's just going to come in here and trash this place. I feel like kind of the plot gets a little silly when Arcadian starts hiring like the like villain of the week guys to go.
I mean, it was almost straight out of Blazing Saddles when they're trying
Yes, yes, that's exactly the same vibe I got. That's exactly the same vibe I got from it was like, holy shit.
Okay, we're gonna interview all these villains and stuff, and I mean, I was waiting for somebody to come up and say we don't need no stinking badges, kind of like in Blazing Saddles, it's like, that.
Exactly lifted from there, and I think appropriately so.
Yeah, and that's fine, and so finally, it gets to the before it gets to the final fight, he finally gets in to talk to the so-called master Sumdum Goy, and he finds out it's a computer, and they're like, we're just using this as just to build business and stuff, and you got this computer just cranking out fortunes that they're putting in these cookies. So he goes back to his instructor, and it's like, what? You told me to go on this search, and and he finally is trying to get him to see that it's like your only search is to find yourself at this point, and I think that's probably genre or that decade specific, because I think a lot of people were really trying to find themselves, and that's
I feel that's
that,
that phrase, even that kind of meant that the finding yourself, right? I think is comes out of that era to a
well,
large degree.
yeah, I mean, look at all these John Hughes movies. I mean, which since I grew up in the '80s, I'm a fan of. I mean, look at 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink. Anything with Molly Ringwald.
Are you saying you want to do a live show in Sherman, Illinois?
Hey, hey, I would love to, but hey, that's fine.
Want to
I
do a
mean,
live podcast in Sherman, Illinois?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mean, all those movies. I mean, granted, they're not martial arts, but in a way, it is about finding yourself. And I mean, that's kind of a lot of what us knuckleheads in the '80s were trying to do, and trying to figure out who we were.
Well, and I feel it's a sentiment that's gone throughout martial arts, right? Essentially, it's like you get to a certain point where it's like you have to define it for yourself. We can't not talk about the glow, and we will develop the glow.
Glow.
And this is essentially what he's looking for the entire time. And there's a throwaway line in there where it's like the glow can be used. The glow is not a good or is a moral thing. The glow can be used for good and evil. And what's funny is that like his like rival throughout the entire thing apparently had it the entire time.
Yeah.
And that was what probably made him a credible, like him destroying the pizza shop is what makes him a credible threat, right? Him beating the crap out of people is what makes him a credible threat. And that's what builds up the finale so well, because he kidnaps for the third time, which is the only kind of annoying thing about the movie, because it makes Laura this repetitive thing that he's like going after. It's like, at what point do you not call the cops on this guy? But
yeah, exactly.
But he basically turns it into like a Mortal Kombat finale.
Well, you could either put it that way or an Enter the Dragon finale. I mean, basically, you have everybody fighting everybody else.
And consistently, we have direct visual reference back to all the Bruce Lee movies.
Yeah.
To the point where like both is a, I guess our poor hero has been so seduced by the concept of kung fu and these martial arts movies that he finds it so engaging that his first encounter with a woman has to be precipitated by watching Chinese Connection
Yeah, yeah,
and Fists of
yeah.
Fury, and to the point where she's like, "I must go on my secret journey now," like motivated by kung fu movies and Bruce Lee movies. I love her line where she's like, "Thanks a lot, Bruce." Womp
Bruce.
womp.
Yeah, the glow is supposed to represent the natural ability of somebody just not even thinking about stuff and just letting your body just take over stuff. Well, okay, that's great, actually make it happen.
This does
I
this
mean,
before like any other like anime or anything like that. Like actually does the whole. Well, okay, maybe that's not true, but like did like before like any sort of like action, like anything popular like shows the hero glowing to the point where they have superpowers or whatever, right? Like I feel like
yeah,
this is like the first time you really see this happen.
yeah. I mean, this is before you know Pokemon and the Power Rangers and all that other stuff. What I mean, I think right after this, you had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles come out, and I mean, it was.
I'm specifically referencing Dragon Ball, but
Yeah, I think that was after this. Not long after, but yeah, it was.
I did enjoy the final fight that you know I don't know how many dilapidated buildings were actually in New York. No, I guess post 70s. I guess that would be plenty. But basically, they have a fight in the dance hall. They're leading our main character. I like how all the side characters come in and start just beating the like his school actually like that mattered in the end because they all come in and like just start beating the crap out of like all of these like. Dude, if
Iron.
you pause that movie and just like look in the background of like what is actually going on. Really, it's like one guy's just on the floor and one guy in like a Wing Chun suit is just kind of holding his fist above his head. They're
Yeah,
not really talking. It's just like in the background, but it's you have to kind of notice it, but it's there. I like how
yeah.
the little kid is just beating the crap out of guys.
Well, I think that's what Ernie Rios Jr. Right?
Maybe. Yeah. You have Glenn Elton. So the guy who plays Johnny Woo he wasn't really any mess around. Guess I'll just we'll mess around on this later. But
But I thought that's who that was because I think that is who it is. But yeah, I mean, yeah, well, all of a sudden, he gets in the middle of it. What, however old he was, what, maybe 8 or 9 or
yeah,
whatever, and he starts tearing them up. You know, so but yeah,
and it's all pretty entertaining. Um, and then like what is it? He finally beats Shogun because he achieves the glow. He's like, who is the master? You are the master. Because this in no
yeah,
way has any sort of racial coding. But it's here, neither here nor there. And then finally he gets shot with a gun and catches it with his teeth.
teeth.
And then he just like straps him to a chain, walks away, and then the police just come. And in the most insightful version of fiction, this guy, not even gonna go there. But anyway, the the ending's actually a little weird because why is everyone wearing white? And it feels like an kind of an 80s ending. Or is
Yeah,
this the big dance party at the end and everyone was somehow coordinated?
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, it was wasn't long after what was it? The Thriller video came out. So I mean, everything was coordinated at that point. So
But I mean, it was a very good ending. And I think overall, a very, a poorly, unfortunately overlooked entry into the martial arts genre that probably was too comedy to can be considered serious, but too, I don't know, too serious to be considered comedy.
Yeah, I mean,
Whereas kind of where it's lost out, I think, feel in like popular appeal because it supposedly takes its roots from blaxploitation, and then like it's too referencey and hokey. But no, it's great. It's great
yeah,
just as it on its own. Like
yeah.
Remo Williams doesn't stand up in the same way.
It's a different movie. I, I think one of the reasons I like Remo Williams is, I'll be perfectly honest, I use a lot of those lines out of that movie whenever I'm trying to correct my kids. It's like, when they're trying to get dressed, it's like, go up and it's like, you guys need to get dressed. The seasons move faster than you two. Now, come on, let's go. I mean, so I use those quite often. But,
This is parenting with Jeremy.
Yeah, either my kids are going to turn out, well, they're going to turn out fantastic no matter what. It just depends on how much level of help they need after.
What I will say is, Cobra Kai needs to end. Whatever season we're on with Cobra Kai now, it needs to end. We need a revival series of The Last Dragon. Netflix. I don't know who you need to talk to. I don't know if you need to talk to Spike Lee. I don't know if you need to talk to Tyler Perry. I don't know
Barry
who
Gordy.
you need.
Go back to Barry Gordy.
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
Well, Michael Schultz was the one who was directed this, but if Barry, I mean, because this is still probably. Oh no, Barry Gordy's still alive. He's 91 years old. Executive producer credit, whatever.
I mean, Betty White's 99. He's still got 8 years to knock this thing out. Come on, man.
Ty Mach is still alive. Unfortunately, we lost Vanity, but I mean, most of the principal cast is still. Some of the principal cast is still there. You can get Ty Mach back into this. Ty Mach looks like he's in great shape. He's in better shape than freaking what is it, Ralph Macchio or Zach or
Wim Zapka?
Yeah, they're in much better. He looks like he's in much better shape. Netflix, get on it. Get Spike Lee involved.
It's something. Maybe even bring Samuel Jackson in on this. I mean,
Sure.
Everything's good with Samuel Jackson. I mean, come
get
on.
William Macy back. He was in this for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
A brief cameo. And then you know what? That would work. That would make him take the Eddie Arcadian position.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then because he was just like thug, and now he like worked his way up.
Yeah.
And there's tons of ways you could do this.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's a great movie of all time. I mean, I don't think it gets near that. I mean, some of the older martial artists, it's like, oh yeah, that's a great movie. Some of the younger generations never even heard of it, and that's kind of sad. So
yeah, I mean, like what's funny is in the kind of the mid 2000s, there was a big, cheap DVD revival.
Yeah.
I saw like a lot of kind of like it's like how I saw the original, like the Bruce Lee movies, like Chinese Connection, and I remember getting the double pack of those first movies. Very cheap, like $10.
Oh yeah,
like mid 2000s. Kind of a travesty in its own because of why are those like great movies so devalued. But like something like this, like is just as enjoyable, like, and is just as.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I got it off of Amazon for like $5 or $6. So I went and bought the DVD on this. So it's kind of.
I guess the last thing I'll say on this movie, I do like the soundtrack. It is nonstop.
Yeah.
So it is almost. It embodies, I think, the other thing, the '80s, but that none of these revival stuff has, and Karate Kid or Cobra Kai tried to do this, but not very well. Is bring back like the score, the movie, like the actual scoring of it, the actual like music of it.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, a lot of those 80s movies like just were like a musical to a degree.
Yeah. Well,
not in the same way. Not everyone's like breaking out into song. They had that like large element of popular music in them that fit very well.
Well, you got to remember. I mean, MTV was what by '85. I mean, MTV was. I mean, it was almost like the second biggest cable channel behind either NBC or ABC. I mean, it was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody. I mean, if you were between the ages of probably 10 and 16, you were watching MTV way too much. I guarantee you that. So, me included, I did my share of watching MTV. But yeah, I mean, I think that all just kind of came together. Now, don't be knocking on some of the score on Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. I mean,
I'm not knocking
but
on that.
Bananarama, I mean, with Cruel Summer, I mean, come on, that's a pretty killer song. That and every time they go to the golf and stuff, they play that same song that was from the original Karate Kid, and it was like, it just brings back a lot of memories. But anyway, that's okay.
The Karate Kid too, and we didn't get Glory of Love at all. So I mean, maybe we didn't get a
Oh,
call back for that. So
okay, yeah, yeah, we can leave that out. That's fine. That's fine.
I would find if they brought that back, but like
I mean,
that's my thing. My thing is like the kind of the theme of that of just having doesn't even need to be a callback, right?
yeah,
Just the fact that you have a score that will carry the movie through, right?
yeah,
And unfortunately, like media these days doesn't really do that,
yeah.
and it could do it very well.
I thought of something else.
Music people don't always work well with that.
Yeah, I thought of something else. You know, they could bring this back. Don't don't judge me. They could bring this back as a Broadway play.
Sure, they did Spider-Man the musical. Why not?
I think it'd actually be pretty decent as a musical, on Broadway
Yeah, and then you just
to a degree.
repurpose. You have to rescore a little bit of like the beginning,
But
make it a bit musical, make it a little make it a bit more lyric. Hey, you don't even need to make it all that lyrical. Essentially, just keep all of the songs right from like the beginning and like then you have that. You keep some fight choreography, and then you have the ending. And
yeah,
like and literally you wouldn't lose anything. You wouldn't be able to do like locations and stuff like that because but it's
no,
a
but
Broadway play. It's a different story. That's how
yeah.
we're gonna save Broadway, Jeremy.
Hey, yeah. I mean, I've been to Broadway so many times. Like, yeah, right, whatever. So I don't. I mean, I mean, sometimes I go to the amphitheater here, but that's about it. But I mean, I think it'd be a big hit. I mean, look at Cobra Kai on Netflix. I mean, try something new. What the heck? Hopefully Barry Gordy or somebody's out there listening to this and like, hey, this sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. So
We'll take a cut and like
I,
2%.
I,
We'll take a
I,
2% cut just because we kind of like put the idea out there.
I, I tell you what. I mean, if they did it, I tell you what. You know what? If I get free tickets, hey, I'm all cool with that. So hey, that'd be awesome.
I just want a picture with timeout.
There you go. That works too.
Or no, he can come on the podcast.
There you go.
Talk to his agent about it. Cool.
Cool.
Anything else we got to say about this?
No, I think we're good. It's just a fun movie. It, yeah, it's just a fun '80s movie about martial arts, and eh, I mean, it's got a little bit of '80s cheese to it, but hey, everything in the '80s had cheese to it, so it's kind of
Cheese makes life good.
yeah,
And I honestly feel I don't feel like this is like, oh, it's the 80s again. It's just more of like it is how you said it. It was that 70s sincerity and like strictness with that came walked straight into like the video culture. And I feel we're due for something similar at some point. Like we're due for something to kind of to circle back, not to necessarily bring back the 80s as everyone's trying to do, but just something in the vein of creating something like this for this generation. But that's yet to be seen. Jeremy, thank you so much for recommending this. Had you had you not even brought this up, we wouldn't be talking about it.
so no, that's cool. It's all good. So I'll try to recommend something new to you. You probably haven't seen next. So
Well, next one I think we will do. We got to do it because it could be our next Saturday night thing.
I got you. Okay.
It could be our next. It can be nice until it's time not to be nice.
Yeah.
But we were just on our break, and maybe we can just stay on our break. But that'll be for a different time. Folks, thanks for listening, and don't forget to keep training.